Happy Mother's Day to all here. Today is a special occasion to celebrate all mothers. Throughout their lives, mothers will hear the word mom. That simple three-letter word you'll hear thousands and thousands of times. From when you were a child of an infant, adolescent, to an adult, to mature and old, you'd always hear those words or say those words, Mom. Now, this message is for my mom, and it's for all mothers, because they're all special. That's a picture of my mom and her three sons. My mother first attended a service here 36 years ago in October on Sheila and our wedding day. Now, she loved these stained glass windows. Now, our family grew up both in a Lutheran and Catholic family, so she was experienced with stained glass windows. She often remarked to me that when light passes through stained glass, it turns into a storybook of faith from mothers, a story waiting to be shared. She would sit in this pew. Sometimes I could just walk over to her and look at her, and I could see that she's looking at those stained glass windows. Or we would ride down through Main Street, and she would say, gee, those stained glass windows are so beautiful. And she would discuss after church the panels, each one of the panels, and the feelings and the interpretations that she interpreted as a mother on each one of these panels. And then, as the years went by, sorry, Pastor Rick, but I also find myself sometimes during your sermon looking at those panels.
You're not alone.
And deciphering what I see, and then they remind me of my mother. Now, Andy, if you could put up the first slide there of the mother with the baby. I'd like to go through the panels and tell you some of the things that my mom said. And we would have conversations about this after church. And it always reminds me of her. Now, the center panel here, now I was told that it's not necessarily Mary or Jesus. It's a young lady with a child. Now, as we could see, she would say the stain and the color behind it is dark. And she felt and interpret that as being, that's at night. And a mom is praying for the strength and guidance of her children and the blessings she receives. Now, every time I see that, I think about it. My mom, she had 3 boys. Every night before we went to bed, we get our pajamas on. She made us kneel down next to the bed and pray. And she would say, you need to pray for those things that you're thankful for and those things that you feel you may need, and thank God. And then she would turn the light off and walk out. So she interpreted that as being a mother praying at night and evening is what a child would do at their prayers. Now, some of these I'm going to talk about or what I see, and some was what hers. But those little symbols underneath Mary, or the mother, now to me they look like acorns. Now, the story and what I see from my mom lived in Southern Virginia in the Tidewater area, lived in a house, didn't have much heat, so she loved the fireplace. She always told my dad that she wanted firewood, but it had to be oak. She didn't want to burn anything but oak, because oak is tall and strong. My dad, when he was younger, and then when the boys were younger, we liked to hunt. And I can remember my dad always saying, look for acorns. Acorns is going to show you where the deer, the squirrels, and where the oak trees are. So when I look at those symbols there, I think of my mom. I'd always call her up and say, Mom, we're heading to Virginia. What do you need? She'd say oak firewood. Now, I don't know how she thought I could get a cord of wood in a trunk, but she would always say that. So my brothers and I always made it that we would help out with my dad for her to get firewood because she loved that fireplace. Now, underneath that, she cherished that plaque that read, "In loving memory of my mother." And she talked about that. She was touched deeply to see how much love a family would pour in dedicating a stained glass window. She wondered about the siblings. It says, in loving memory of my mother. So, was it a son? Was it a daughter? Was it sons and daughters? How many? My mom grew up in a large family. There were 6 girls and 5 brothers. Now, the 6 girls all knew how to cook. They all knew how to sew. They lived on a farm. They knew how to drive a tractor and double clutch a truck. So she was always impressed and reflecting on her childhood with her brothers and sisters. And she would ask me sometimes if I knew any of the Sharp family or the descendants. And I said, no, that was way before my time. But she just thought that that was a loving thing that someone could do for their family. Now, in the lower right panel of this one here, you'll see 2 symbols. And now I see this because of things that my mom said to us when we were growing up as boys, but I see a heart. And around that heart, I see 2 brown things that appear to me to be serpents. And I can remember when my mother would tell me that you can see sin, you can hear sin, and you can speak sin, but don't let Satan into your heart. And every time I look at that, I remember those things that she said to me, that we constantly, every day, see sin. We hear sin, and sometimes we speak of sin, but when it gets to our heart, that's when we need of forgiveness and God. Now, above those left and right panels, she said she saw palms. And she came here one Palm Sunday to service because they would come here. If they were on a weekend, they would come to church with us. And one Sunday was Palm Sundays, and she really loved, and I do too, when the kids just walked around the whole sanctuary here, waving the palms. And then she would say, the palms to her. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, everybody waved the palms. They threw the palms on the ground. There was celebration, jubilant. And then later, there was some pain and hurt. And then later, a tragedy. So she said that palm reminds her that in life, one day you're celebrating, the next day something hurts, and you face tragedy. But remember, sons, that triumph with God in your heart will reappear. So when I see those, I think of her and her palms and what she said. Now, above those palms, there's a Holy Bible. We had several conversations about this, and it was really interesting. She said, I don't know why they just put Holy Bible across, because if I open my Bible, I don't see each page says Holy Bible. And she said, son, that's telling you that you need to open your Bible. There's so many of us that have Bibles that are collecting dust on the shelf. If we don't open them up, then they're not doing anything. It's just a book. So she thought the artist who did that specifically to tell us that you need to open that Bible. You just sit it there next to you. And she said, grab your Bible. Now, she always had a Bible, and it sat next to her, and it was open all the time. And she said, it's just so nice to know that it's sitting there, and you see it open, and God speaks to you. Just pick it up and read it. So when I see that, I think of my mother and other mothers that have said and supported their children like her. Now, on the other panel there, you'll see a crown floating. Now, this is something that I think of, and I have taken from this. That crown is floating. There's no one wearing it. It's just there. That's the crown that God and Jesus has given us, and it's for anyone. Now, I would have days when I would come home, be depressed, be unhappy for something, and my mom would always say, when you have a crown, everything turns wonderful. And I think that crown is the crown of your faith that's open for anyone who wants to wear it. Now moving over to and if we can flip to the other side, we'll talk about that stained glass window. Now, I guess a couple years ago, or a year or so ago, I had pointed out when I was giving a message that if you look at Jesus as he's looking at the Lamb, the cloud formation to the left, to me, appears like I see a face of Mary. There's her hair, her eye, her nose, and her mouth, and she is looking at her son, Jesus. Now, my mom interpreted that stained glass one as, of course, we've all heard the proverbial story, finding the lost lamb or the lost lamb. Now, she said that that's the sheep that's in front is mom. Mom is looking up at her child, making sure it's safe. And behind is a sheep that's behind it. And she said, that's Dad. That's Dad looking out for anything in danger that may come. And she also said at one time, she said, he looks like he's walking on rocks. It doesn't look smooth. And I can remember my mom saying, your life is never a smooth road. Your faith is tested up and down and can be rocky. And before you get to where you need to be in life, it may be a rocky road. So that's how I interpret that. Now, to the right of that, you'll see the Lamb, and you'll see a Christian banner. Now, we all know, and we've all read Matthew 5:5, which is the meek will inherit the earth. I look at that, my mom would say it sometimes, in this life, there are a lot of lions. They roar, they make a lot of noise, but it's the meek to get things done with the faith that they have for their family. So when I look at that lamb with the faith to get things done. Now, I think in contrast, she was also talking about, I think that in a family, at the house, mothers are the ones that get mostly things done. And that dad just sits there and barks orders. So I really think that that's what she was trying to illustrate me on that. Now, the other panel to the left of Jesus is a dove and a light. Now, I used to come home sometimes when things didn't go so well and say I had a bad day. Things are happening. And we see on the news every day, we're so looking for peace on earth. And a dove represents peace on earth. But to me, the light that shines from God makes the peace on earth. If there's no light for the dove, it's just a bird. So I interpret that from the things that my mom and I had spoken, that we all want peace, but unless we have the light of God and the faith in our hearts, we won't have it. Now, the last thing, now you might say, gee, Ron, what kind of medication or what are you doing or something, but when you're in here listening to a sermon, but those semicircles on top, see those green things? I see pineapples. Now, I guess I was 11 years old. I went to the A&P supermarket. And for the first time in my life, I saw a real pineapple. Now, I thought pineapples were round with a hole in it. They taste good. They were sweet. When I asked my mom what it was, she said a pineapple. I didn't believe her. Because I thought, well, the spiky tops, the rough surrounding, the body of it, it's ugly. And I can remember my mom would always say, and I'm sure all mothers have done this, you can't judge by what you see. It's in the heart is where the sweetness and love is. So I see a pineapple, and I remember I can't just see, and if I see, I got to look for the love and the sweetness inside anyone. So if you happen to see me doing church, I look up there, I see my mom, I think about the things that mothers have done in raising their children, the love she had for those stained glass windows, and I really think about her. Now, Mom, I love you. I hope I didn't embarrass you. I hope the conversations we had about stained glass windows inspires me and makes me think of her and any mother. Mom, God bless you, and God bless all mothers today. Thank you.